Hey guys, thank you so much for hopping on this live. I appreciate each and every one of you for hopping on. Give me just a second, folks. Sorry about this. Technical difficulties, right? It happens sometimes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to get on even for a little bit tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Health Coach Troy, and I live here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm curious if any one of you have ever been to Arizona before. So I'm going to be talking about something that is affecting 93% of us. Metabolic health, metabolic syndrome. Okay. Some of you may have heard this before. And before I really get started, I would really love to know where each and every one of you are tuning in from. So if you wouldn't mind, drop your location in the chat. Okay. I always love seeing where people are connected around the world. And as Solomon said in the Bible, in all you're gaining, gain understanding. Well, let me tell you, when you understand insulin, folks, it changes everything. It's an absolute game changer. And I'm excited to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So tonight, and here's the thing, if you're eating better than you ever have, if you're exercising more, and you're still struggling with weight or energy or labs that won't improve, I hope you guys will stay here. This live is why that happens. And so this evening, what I would like to talk about is insulin resistance, what it actually is, and why it's behind almost every chronic issue that you and I are seeing today. And most importantly, what you can do about it. So if you are somebody that knows that you are struggling with insulin resistance, type me in the chat. It helps me to know how many people are relating to this. Okay. Now, some of you know my story, some of you don't. But back in November of 2014, I donated a kidney to my sister's husband, my brother-in-law. And I'm very honored to have been able to do that, to donate that kidney. But folks, it was literally 7 years later when I was diagnosed with what is called stage 4 kidney disease. And this was my wake-up call. I've always been healthy. In fact, when I was told that I had this, I was going to the gym 5 days out of the week. I was eating as healthy as I possibly could and, working out. I felt like I was in the best shape of my life. And I remember sitting across from the doctor, and I literally asked the doctor if he got my paperwork mixed up. That's how shocking it was. And so what I'm going to be talking about this evening is just that, insulin resistance. And I'm going to be explaining how the body responds to food and insulin and timing, because most people were taught, honestly, the wrong information. Now, I nearly lost everything a couple different times because I had insulin resistance so bad. And folks, most people don't even know that they have it. That's the scary part. And so, as Solomon said in the Bible, in all you're gaining, gain understanding. When you understand something, we can make better decisions and choices. And so, I spent a lot of time educating people on metabolic health, specifically insulin resistance, because I've seen what happens when it goes unchecked. So thank you to everyone who's hopping on, who's sharing this, who's tapping the screen. Thank you. God bless you guys for doing that. And, I'm somebody who dealt with stage 4 kidney disease. I'm somebody who lost family members early. And what shocked me is that diabetes never ran in my family. Amy G, thank you for hopping on. This isn't about willpower, folks. It's about understanding your body and understanding why things happen the way that it does. Because I think if you understand something, we can make different decisions. If you have insulin resistance, Marcela Flores, hello. Okay, if you have insulin resistance, you're not alone at all. Okay. So we're going to talk about this. Okay. And we're going to identify it. And here's the deal, folks. If you want to make a big impact in business or in life, you've got to be able to solve a major problem. And right now, one of the biggest issues in the world today is insulin resistance. It's our health. If you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. You could have the most beautiful house, the car, the money, but if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. And I'm curious. I always like to ask this question because it helps me to know how many people that might be struggling with this. But how many of you have skin issues like skin tags or psoriasis, right? Some of you can't see this, but how many of you are tired all the time? How many of you are carrying weight that you can't seem to lose no matter what it is that you do? How many of you have the belly fat, right? The excess belly fat that you can't seem to get rid of? What about diabetes? What about neuropathy or retinopathy? What about gout or GERD or autoimmune conditions? Okay. How many of you have ever been told that type 2 diabetes is progressive, right? First and foremost, type 2 diabetes is not progressive and it's not a life sentence. And truth versus reality, thank you for being on. Type 2 diabetes can be fixed, it can be improved. Type 1 diabetics can even be improved. You can't reverse it, but you can improve it. And here's what I share. Here's the good news. You don't need meds or diets to fix it. I'm going to share 2 simple things that you can do every day that will help you to start improving your metabolic health naturally. Okay? So let me say something too in regards to type 2 diabetes. Okay? Type 2 diabetes, folks, is not inherited. It's not insulin dependent. It's carbohydrate toxicity syndrome. You don't get sick because your blood sugar is high. Your blood sugar is high because insulin is broken. Does that make sense? That's what insulin resistance is. And if this hits home, I hope that you guys will continue to tap the screen. When you do this, by the way, you actually share this with people that are looking for this. How many of you, when you go to your doctor tells you that your labs look normal, but you don't feel normal, right? You feel sick. And this is actually one of the reasons why people stay stuck, right? I want you guys to understand something about insulin. It's not your friend. Insulin is a hormone, okay? And truth versus reality. I really do appreciate you being a part of this live tonight because what I share with people helps people to overcome this naturally. Okay. I've got a kitten that's throwing paper around. But I mean, think about this. Every time you and I eat, we spike our blood sugar. Every time. Whether we take a bite of food or whether we take a drink of something, we spike our glucose. And when we spike our glucose, folks, what happens is that your body releases a hormone called insulin. Okay. Insulin is what moves the glucose out of your bloodstream and it carries it to your cells. Okay. And this is where your cells would use this for energy. And normally our cells would be okay with this. But if you and I are eating all day long, do you guys realize that your insulin stays high all day long? And Mud Dog, that's got to be super hard, but props to you for being able to do that. And truth versus reality, this is why I do this. Okay. So, how many of you have a CGM, right? I saw a commercial earlier today for CGMs. That's a continuous glucose monitor, right? I want you guys to understand something that's truly important that you need to know about CGMs. CGMs don't manage your diabetes, and here's why. A CGM, folks, it gives you information. That's it. A CGM is like a breathalyzer, right? It tells you how drunk you are, but it doesn't fix alcoholism. Information without behavior change changes nothing. If you went to your family reunion, right, you've got both sides of the family there, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, your siblings, your kids. Folks, how many people there at that family reunion are dealing with health issues? I think you and I could throw a pebble down the street, and I think that we would come in contact with at least 10 people that are struggling with these health issues. So why are we struggling with this? And most importantly, folks, what are some things that you and I can do to improve this? See, insulin is a key. It is the gatekeeper to our cells. It's what unlocks our cells, and it's what allows the glucose to enter in. But when you and I eat all day long, we're constantly spiking insulin spikes on top of insulin spikes, and it's perpetual. And before you know it, your pancreas breaks down and you've got diabetes. When diabetes develops into cardiovascular disease and heart issues and Alzheimer's and everything else. And I want to explain it in another way that I think might help you to understand insulin resistance, right? Here's a great analogy. If you put a chicken in the oven, right, it goes from pink to brown. And you can actually see it cooking, right? That's the browning process is called glycation. Okay. It's the same thing that happens when you toast bread, right? When I put a piece of bread in a toaster, the same process, glycation, is what's causing that bread to toast. But what most people don't realize is that from the time that you and I are born, okay, the human body is actually slowly undergoing the same process on the inside, very gradually over time. This is one of the reasons why, the cartilage in babies is white, while in much older adults it becomes darker. It's a gradual accumulated glycation. And I want to help you to understand that every blood sugar spike, okay, every time we take a drink of something or a bite of something, every blood sugar spike actually accelerates this process because glucose is what drives glycation, which is why the word sounds so familiar, right? And if we're eating all the time, folks, more frequent spikes means faster biological aging, more internal wear and tear, right? Increased inflammation. And the visible signs, we can see it, right? It's the wrinkles on our body, okay? It's the loss of tissue flexibility. And Sandy, thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate that. And I'm not exactly sure why. And so over time, these chronic health issues, right? The constant glucose spikes that we have, it requires more and more insulin. And what happens is this stresses your body. Now, Speed Racer, thank you for the conversation, the phone conversation earlier. I really appreciated that. And I'm so grateful that you were open enough to trying this, right? And I love the experience that you're having using it. It makes me so happy. Why is insulin resistance, folks, so important to understand? Because more than half of the United States population has prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And chronic conditions like obesity and cardiovascular disease and autoimmune disorders, they're skyrocketing. But it's not just physical health, folks. Think about people that you know that are struggling with infertility or reproductive. How many women struggle with PCOS? How many men have erectile dysfunction? And you want to know my biggest frustration, and maybe it's yours too. What's frustrating is that we are often given medications for each symptom, but they don't fix the root cause. My goal is to help change this. So whether you have gastritis or IBS or diabetes or anything else, I want you guys to understand that insulin resistance is something that can be improved. How many of us were told that fat was bad, right? We were told that fat was bad and sugar was okay. And we were told to eat 3 meals a day and to snack 2 to 3 times a day, right? How many of us were given that advice? A lot of us were. And because of this, this created nonstop insulin spikes. Folks, we didn't fail the system failed us. This is why there's so many people in our country that is overweight. How many of you are constantly tired all the time? How many of you are craving sugar and salt even late at night? How many of you are constantly wanting to eat all the time? How many of you are on a bunch of meds? How many of you would like to get off that, right? Truth versus reality, right? Seed oils causes inflammation. It's true. Insulin resistance, right? Inflammation happens to be, one of the root causes of insulin resistance. Here's the shift that changed everything for me. Folks, you don't fix insulin resistance by eating less food. You fix it by eating less often. One of the things that I educate and I teach people on is fasting, time-based eating, right? Going longer periods of time without putting food into your body. When you do that, you really give your body the ability to start healing itself. You allow your gut to heal. You allow the insulin to come down. See, intermittent fasting isn't starving, it's metabolic repair. You're allowing your body to start healing itself from the inside out. Who here has ever tried fasting but felt awful? Right? I used to. I don't anymore, but I used to. I'm a foodie. I love food. And I remember when I was younger, our family would fast. And I remember even skipping one meal, I felt like I was like dying, like I was starving. And then I would binge eat. And our body actually runs better when we actually don't eat first thing in the morning. In fact, if you give yourself time to heal, your body actually runs better, it functions better. And truth, this is why I have this, because when I sip on this, it literally shuts the food noise off. The cravings, the hunger goes away. Ishaya, Shalom, and Alicia, thank you so much for that. Now, I want you guys to understand something, okay? When we go to a doctor, here's the part that nobody wants to tell you, okay? If I go to the doctors because I have IBS or migraines or cholesterol issues, okay? My doctor, and let's say that I go to 3 different doctors, I'm going to pay 3 different copays, and not one of those, right? And the medications that you're going to be put on, at least 2 to 3, not one of them is even going to touch the root cause. See, all they're doing is managing the symptoms, the numbers. Now, I want you guys to understand something. I'm not anti-doctor. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm anti-ignoring the root cause. We've got to understand why this is happening to our bodies. Right? I think one of the biggest issues also is that most medical professionals are not talking about insulin resistance. So, folks, if you have a doctor that is talking to you about this, hold on to them. Because the sad reality is that most doctors don't even talk about this, which is sad. You know, I don't want to ignore the root cause. I want people to understand why things are happening the way that they are. But here's the other thing. Doctors test what they can medicate, right? Your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your A1C. But you know what's interesting is doctors don't test inflammation and they don't test your fasting insulin. Now, why is that? Because there's no prescription for insulin resistance. Think about this. Doctors test what they can medicate. And this is exactly why I teach the feel great system, because it works. It helps to lower insulin naturally. This is not a detox. This is, it's not a quick fix, right? Nothing to do with that. Folks, I have seen more people lower their A1C. I've seen more people improve type 2 diabetes and they no longer have it. Their doctors are impressed. I've seen more people finally, for the first time in years, actually get a good night's rest. I've seen more people reverse type 2 than ever before. Neuropathy, all of these things that are all caused by one thing. And truth versus reality, right? Doctors test what they can medicate. What I'm sipping on right here, right? What I'm sipping on happens to be a natural form of that truth versus reality. And this is why I teach fasting and fiber, right? There's two things that I teach, fasting and fiber, and making sure that you have the right tools. What I use every single day, and folks, I've been using this system for 2 years now. In November of 2004, I donated a kidney to my sister's husband, and it was 7 years later when I was diagnosed with kidney disease. And my nephrologist literally said, "Hey, you need to lose some weight, change your diet, and if you don't, it's dialysis or worse." And my doctor gave me a medication that just made me sick. After 2 months of it, I stopped taking it because it was making me sick. And it was 2.5 years later when I learned what insulin resistance was, which is why I get on these lives and I make videos, and because people need to understand, people need to be able to see what they can start to do to improve their health. My dad passed away on Easter Sunday, 2017. And he passed away from something that could have been prevented. My brother was 33 years old in January of '05 when he passed away. And I think about the people in my life, my friends that were younger than me, that are no longer here. It could have been prevented. And this is why I get on here. Now, folks, if you've ever been diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, that's a huge red flag. Here's the thing. These symptoms aren't just normal aging, right? They're signals from your body that's telling you that something is off. And insulin resistance could be the culprit. What's interesting is that if you have diabetes, do you realize that you are 81% more likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia? And you're 80% more likely to have cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, things like that. And what's interesting is that we often have been taught to move more and eat less, right? How many of you have ever been told by a doctor or a nutritionist to, move more and eat less? Okay. If you've ever been given that advice, would you mind typing a one in the chat? I call this to the calories in, the calories out approach. And I want to share something with you. There was I want you guys to imagine that I'm eating 1,500 calories and I'm going to the gym every day and I'm burning 2,000 calories. Okay. If I did that, that would be a 500 calorie deficit, right? And if I did this every day for 1 week, that would be 3,500 calories, which is equivalent to 1 pound of fat loss. Now, if I weighed 200 pounds, I don't, but if I did, and if I did this for the next 200 weeks, would I end up would I end up weighing 0? And of course not. And the reason is because our bodies are a lot smarter than simple math. But you know what's interesting? There was a study, done back in 1919 at the Carnegie Institute of Washington, where they dropped people's calories by 25%. And guess what happened to the people? They couldn't stop thinking about food. You guys ever remember those Snickers commercials, right? Where people turn into monsters because they're so hungry? It was the same vibe, same process. But folks, right? But it wasn't just hunger that these people were experiencing. They started losing muscle too. See, folks, if you're trying to lose weight and you get on that scale, you're really setting yourself up, because the number on the scale doesn't tell you if you're losing fat or muscle. And and here's the thing, muscle is what keeps your metabolism firing. And when you lose your muscle, right, your metabolism slows down. Did you guys know that this is actually one of the ways that they determine when somebody's ready for a nursing home, as to whether or not they can get up and out of a chair or doing a basic squat? But here's where it gets a little bit deeper. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. When you drastically cut calories, okay, your body doesn't just burn fat, it actually starts breaking down your muscle. It lowers your cardiac stroke output, meaning that your heart's weaker. It actually slows your immune system by 50%. This is one of the reasons why when you're sick, you feel weak and sluggish, right? You just want to watch a movie. But when your insulin levels stay high, which is for most of us, it's staying high all day. What happens is that your body starts to store fat. Remember this, insulin is it's a fat storing hormone. Its job is storage. It's not blood sugar, it's storage. Okay. And so when insulin is high, this is where inflammation can set in, and the bacteria and viruses and all of this can start to grow. So the key to all of this, right? The key point of this is that when you fast or when you go longer periods of time without eating, you avoid these glucose spikes. No food means no glucose spike, which means that your body doesn't have to release insulin. This is key. This is huge. The biggest problem is that most of us are eating literally all day long. Okay. We're constantly spiking our glucose, right? We're constantly feeding the bad bacteria. Now, remember I said that it's not about eating less food, right? It's about eating less often. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the most important meal of your day? If you wouldn't mind dropping that in the chat, what's the most important meal of your day? Okay, Speed Racer says dinner. Okay. See lunch. Craig, how you doing, brother? Alicia says breakfast. You know what's interesting is I was always told Thank you for that, Craig. I was always told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. You guys realize that we were told that 60% of our daily intake should be carbs? There was a corporation by the name of Kellogg's that created this idea that, breakfast was the most important meal of the day. And they told us to start our day with a bowl of carbo freaking hydrates first thing in the morning, right? Start your day with carbs. You guys realize that if you start your day with carbs or bagels or foods like that, do you guys realize that you are wrecking the rest of your day? Have you guys ever noticed that if you eat that when you go to work, you're tired, right? You're constantly wanting to take a nap, your energy is low. That's why, right? Many of you, I was told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. Break fast, right? It's the meal that ends your fast. But here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you eat first is technically your breakfast, right? Whether that's at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night, the key is what we eat because that first meal actually sets the tone for everything else. Now, maybe breakfast was just a marketing tactic to sell more cereal and bagels, and I think that that was true. And truth versus reality, right? Bowl sugar. Folks, if breakfast is your favorite meal, it's mine too. Consider having it for lunch or for dinner. And instead of having breakfast, what I would encourage you is to fast. Go a period of time without putting food into your mouth or calories into your mouth. See, our bodies actually run better when we don't eat first thing in the morning. But what you and I were taught back in the 80s and 90s was a lie. Think about this. Okay. How many diabetics were told to start their day with oats, right? If you're diabetic, how many of you were told to not fast and eat oats for breakfast? What do we feed horses to fatten them up, folks? Can you guys remember the pyramid, the food thing? We were told that every day that we should have 6 to 11 servings of what every day? And what do we feed cows to fatten them up? Right? Folks, this is why education's so important. You and I could be reading from the wrong book. We could be very intelligent and smart people, but if we're learning from the wrong book, we're just stuck. That's it. And folks, if you're ready for change, what I share with people is a natural alternative to what modern medicine wants to give us. Let's talk about something, folks, that's been debated for a really long time, and that's whether or not carbohydrates are essential. And I'm curious as to what you think, right? And we've got three of them. Okay, we've got carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But folks, if I overeat, which one of those causes me to have diabetes? Is it eating too many fats, eating too many protein, or eating too many carbs? Craig, right? Craig says carbs are not essential, and Kimberly's asking what we should eat. Folks, carbs are the only non-essential macronutrient that we don't need. And let me explain why this is. See, every time you and I eat food, right, that food is being converted into a simple sugar that enters our bloodstream. It's glucose, right? And when our glucose goes up, your insulin is released, right? Because it's moving that glucose out of your bloodstream into our cells. And what happens when your cells become resistant, your body continues to dump out more and more insulin, just trying to move the same amount of glucose. And this is what sets us up for a greater risk for health issues. When you fast, when you go longer periods of time without thinking or eating food, do you guys realize that our body can actually get the fuel that it needs from our stored calories? How many of you have the excess love handles or the belly fat? When you go longer periods of time and you're giving yourself that time to heal, your body will actually start tapping into the stored fat and will use that for your primary source of fuel. This is one of the reasons why people start to lose weight, right? The muffin tots. This is why people start to lose weight because you're giving your body the ability to start burning that stored fat. And here's the wonderful thing about it. It's a process called gluconeogenesis, right? Your body is creating ketones. And what's great about ketones is that it doesn't need insulin to get into your cells. It can get into your cells by itself. It doesn't need insulin. This is why I love sharing this. You know, there was I won't get into the study, but there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Francis Pottinger, and he loved cats. And he studied cats for 3 generations. And he had 3 different groups. He had one group that ate raw meat, one that had raw milk, and the third was box food, right? Like the ultra processed foods that you and I eat. And he said that the cats that were eating the box foods, right, the processed stuff, they all had major health issues. And in 30 years of studying these cats that were eating the box food, he said only a third of those could actually reproduce. But he said that the cats that were eating the raw meat and the raw milk, guess what? He said they were perfectly fine. How many people do you know, folks, in your life that have fertility issues or reproductive issues? How many of you know people that struggle to have kids and they spend tens of thousands of dollars, a lot of money, right? I really wish I knew this information 20 years ago. My brother would still be here. My dad would still be here. And when we talk about those 3 macronutrients, right, your body, you know, what's interesting is that we don't actually need carbs for glucose because our body can convert that stored fat. We can get the fuel that we need. But when we look at things like the simple carbs, right? How many of you love simple carbs? Right? They taste so good, right? The food industry knows exactly how to make them enjoyable, right? They put a lot of sugar and sweeteners in it, salt. And so we eat more and more and more of this. This is what leads to diabetes. Diabetes is what leads to cardiovascular disease. It's what leads to Alzheimer's. And so if we are told to start our day with a bowl of sugar, which is just carbs, and maybe a glass of orange juice, folks, all it is carbs. Carbs is what leads to diabetes and all this. You know, there's a great book. Okay, it's called Metabolical. Okay, I know some of you can't see this, but it's called Metabolical. Okay, and it was written by Dr. Robert Lustig. And he's a nutrition genius, right? He went to MIT, he's got a medical degree from Cornell. He's super smart. He's a childhood endocrinologist. But he said something interesting. He said that the number one fast food restaurant in the world is not what you think it is. If I was to ask you guys that question, I would imagine that many of you would type McDonald's. And Monica, you're welcome. Ibby, you're welcome. See, most of you would say that McDonald's is the number one fast food restaurant in the world. And although they have probably the most real estate, Dr. Robert Lustig said that the number one fast food restaurant in the world is our public schools food system. Think about what our kids are eating every single day at school. What about hospital menus? What about diabetic meal plans, right? That are full of ultra processed foods, refined carbs, right? To spike your blood sugar and your insulin. Folks, if our kids start their day with a bowl of cereal and a glass of orange juice, do you realize that that amount of sugar is like 41 grams of sugar, which is more than what an adult should have in an entire day? And they're having this in the form of just one meal. Too much sugar in the brain of a child leads to ADHD. I had it as a kid. I was put on meds because of it. Too much sugar in the brain of an adult leads to Alzheimer's and dementia. Too much sugar in your joints leads to arthritis. Too much sugar in your cardiovascular system leads to a condition called atherosclerosis. Folks, this is why it's so important to do everything that you can to improve your health. How many of you were told that salt raises your blood pressure? And while this can be true in some cases, there's a much bigger factor at play here, and it's not salt, folks, it's sugar. It's stress. When you consume too much sugar throughout the day, starting with that, fruit-laden breakfast, and then you have lunch, and then you have snacks, and then you have dinner, and then you have desserts, and then you have snacks later, right? Your insulin stays high all day long. See, remember this. High insulin is telling your body to store fat. And when you keep it high, something else happens, right? Your body goes into fight or flight mode. You can't burn, you cannot burn fat and store fat at the same time. Does that make sense? But being that we've been told that salt is what causes your high blood pressure, do you guys realize that if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, what do your doctors try and put you on? Anybody want to type that in the chat? Starts with an S, ends with an N, right? Now let's say that somebody that you love has a heart attack, okay? And hopefully that doesn't happen, but the paramedics rush in to save their life. And Alicia, Craig, you're absolutely right. But let's say that a family member has a heart attack, the paramedics come in, right? And thank goodness for those heroes. But here's what they do. They administer an IV. Do you guys realize what's in that IV? It's salt. How many of you are on a water pill? Type WP in the chat if you are. Do you want to know what water pills are? It's salt. It's patented salt. Salt is precisely what our body needs, folks. When you're in a medical emergency, that's exactly what we need. But, and by the way, if your blood pressure is astronomically high, they might even put you on 2 bags of saline, right? But it's crazy what our body needs and what the medical system's treatment, right? It often contradicts what we've been taught, what we've been told on a daily basis about our diet and our health. Understanding this is the first step to making better choices and really taking control of your health. Folks, 2026 should be that goal for you. I want to say something that might encourage you and maybe even wake you up at the same time. Think about this. I live in Mesa, Arizona, and I happen to pass by a cemetery, and my brother and my dad are there. And you guys realize that is a place that is full of people who thought they had more time. These were people who believed that tomorrow was guaranteed. But here's the truth. Right now is the only moment that you actually have. We tell ourselves, hey, I've got tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll call. Tomorrow I'll say I'm sorry, or tomorrow I'll take my health seriously. But tomorrow isn't promised. You don't know what this day will bring. We don't know what this year will bring. And thinking that you're healthy or wealthy doesn't make you immune to what actually happens. Folks, the graveyard is full of people who thought the same thing. So let me ask you something real, okay? Think about this, right? If you've been putting your health on hold, saying, I'll deal with it later, Later, later may cost you more than what you realize. And I really wish that I had my dad back. The because the best time that we can change is the moment that we realize that we still can. Folks, I wish I knew the information that I'm sharing with you 20, 30 years ago. My mom, she's 84 years old, and she lives in a memory care facility in in Tennessee, and it's the hardest thing in the world to just see somebody you love just start to deteriorate, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Folks, it's time for a shift in how we approach nutrition and what we're feeding our kids and ourselves. 2026 can be a year where we literally take control of our health and we can break free from the cycle of one medication after another. And folks, if you're looking for something, if what I've shared resonates with you, let's connect. What I use is an absolute game changer. It is literally changing people's lives all over the world, and hardly anybody has it. When we think about insulin resistance, when you go to your doctor, all your doctor is going to do is put you on a medication. Do you guys realize that there is a solution to the problem and it's been around for a long time and hardly anybody knows about it? Remember, I said something earlier that doctors test what they can medicate. There's two biggest testing in humans that doctors don't test for. One is inflammation, and the other is fasting insulin. When we go to our doctors, they check our fasting glucose levels all the time, and our glucose can be normal, right? But insulin could be high for 10 or 20 years before it actually even leads to a diagnosis. It's interesting that the fasting insulin is what controls your blood sugar, but the only thing your doctors test you for when it comes to that is your your fasting glucose. They refuse to check your fasting insulin or even your inflammation because guess what? There's no prescription for insulin resistance. Folks, they make money when they prescribe. Does that make sense? Folks, if you're ready to feel good and ready to make a real change in your health, this is your sign. I love talking about this. I will never stop using this. It has literally changed my life. I've been using it for 2 years now. I will never stop using it. I have a customer, actually a few customers that are actually on this live. Speed Racer is one of them. There are people that have literally tried everything under the sun and it didn't work. And so if you're looking for something, if this resonates with you, if this sounds like what maybe you've been praying for, maybe asking God, hey, please help me with this, right? I totally believe in, I don't believe in coincidences, and I certainly don't believe in happenstances. I think that everything happens for a reason. This is what I built Health Coach Troy for. Because the more people that understand what insulin resistance is, the more people around the world that can start to change that trajectory. You guys realize that 93% of people in the world, or here in the US, are considered insulin resistance. Folks, if you and I are in a classroom with 100 students, there's only 7 students that are passing the class. That means that 93 are failing. And Ibby, what I use is the Filgrave system, right? And all of the information is, and even the LINK is, it's in my bio. All of the information's in my profile. Fasting is great. Fasting is one of the best things that we can actually do to start improving our health. Fasting is actually what gives your gut the break that it actually needs. Medications are not the answer, folks. Folks, I'm going to be on tomorrow morning at, I think my event's at can't remember if it's at 8 o'clock or 8:30. Craig, thank you for putting that in there, right? This protocol makes the fasting easier. It really does. For any of you that have ever struggled with fasting, this literally makes fasting so much easier. I can fast for days. And here's the thing. When you fast for 24 hours, you guys realize that you reset your gut? When you fast for 72 hours, you can actually reset your entire immune system. It's crazy. It works. It's powerful. And folks, thank you so much for hopping on tonight. Right, Dolly, sleepless nights and diabetes, that's hard. And Deslo, I can't wait for you to get it. You know, we've been taught to eat so much sugar, you know, and it's crazy that, you know, we were told that cholesterol was bad for us, right? And they started putting everybody on these statins, right? And here's what they didn't tell you, folks. Your brain is made up of cholesterol. Every cell membrane in your body actually depends on it. And if we drop our cholesterol too low, you start to lose memory, right? You get joint pain, your energy tanks, your hormones crash. And guess what? If you're on a statin, folks, do you guys realize that your diabetes risk goes up by 50%? And Craig, thank you for letting Antonio Rios, right? And folks, if you've ever been told that it's your fault, that you just need to eat less and move more, it's a lie. It's the system. It's the processed foods. It's the constant snacking. It's the fear of fat. It's the bad advice that we've received. And I'm telling you right now, folks, it's fixable 100%. And Speed Racer, he said, 0 regrets for me. It's proven and it works. Folks, the great news of 2026 is that you can fix it naturally. What I use every day is clinically proven and guaranteed to do just that. And if you're feeling lost and maybe you're dealing with health issues that, you know, or a bunch of meds that you've been on for a long time and you're confused and not knowing what to do, just know that there's hope. This is why I share this. I love and appreciate each and every one of you for hopping on this live this evening. I appreciate it. I am living proof that stage 4 kidney disease can be improved. I lost 32 pounds. I had migraine headaches that I had for 23 years that are gone. My acid reflux, the brain fog, it's gone. Acid reflux, sleep apnea, gone. And when I went back to my nephrologist after using this for 5 months, my kidney doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to keep shouting from the rooftops and sharing this with everybody that I possibly can. And Alicia, for those of you that are wanting this information, send me a DM. I'm happy to connect with each and every one of you. And if you want to jump on a call, I'm happy to do that. Ibby, thank you so much. Okay. And Deco says, every word you say is true. I've been on this health journey for 10 years. It works. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Ibby, thank you so much. Alicia, just want to make sure that you got the information that you need. And folks, love and appreciate you. Craig, be safe out there. And ladies and gentlemen, honestly, if there's anything that I can do, just know that I'm here to help you. It works. I wouldn't do this every day if it didn't work. Medications are not the answer. They're not. This is why I do this. Okay. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. I wish that I could reach thousands and thousands and millions of people. There's billions of people around the world, folks, that are looking for this, and they don't even know that it exists. And their doctor, your doctor, doesn't even know that this exists, even though it's been around for over 30 years. We are the only company in the world that has what is called a nutraceutical that is listed in the same PDR that doctors prescribe from. And Eunice, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, moderation, right? And here's what I would tell you about food. Okay. And I'll end on this. Okay. I get, and people ask me all the time, do I have to, you know, eat certain foods? And that's what's so great about this. Folks, I'm not a firm believer that diets work. Okay. I don't think that they work long term. There's an order. Okay. If you can remember to eat your food in this order, it'll make the biggest difference in your glucose and your insulin spike. Have your fiber first. Okay. If you know you're going to have pasta or pizza, have have a salad first. Have some vegetables first. When you have that fiber first, what it does is it creates a protective barrier inside your stomach, right? This is why I love this fiber. It's made up of 7 soluble fibers and insoluble. Our body needs diversified types of fiber. And when you have the right type of fiber, it creates a barrier. It's like putting on a protective coat. It slows down the absorption of the sugar and the carbs from the foods. It slows down your digestion. It helps you to feel full so that we're not overeating. Okay. Have you guys ever wondered why, when you go to a restaurant, they're bringing you bread or chips to start your meal? They're not doing it to be nice. They're doing it because they know that while you're looking at that menu, deciding what you want to buy, you're going to be chomping on the bits, right? You're going to be eating that bread from Texas Roadhouse. You're going to be eating the chips and salsa. And what it does is it causes you to be hungrier faster. So you'll end up eating more and you'll spend more money. That's why they do it. It's smart marketing, right? And when you should be finished eating your meal, you're ready for dessert, right? They're telling you, look at the dessert menu. Linda Lugo, thank you. Truth versus reality, thank you. Folks, if you want what I have, I'm happy to share it with you. It's an absolute game changer. It will blow you away at how well it works. And the best part about it, and I'll end on this, is that if for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, it comes with a 90-day happiness guarantee. Just get your money back. If it doesn't work, it's $5 a day, which is less than what we would spend at Starbucks. But ladies and gentlemen, I love and appreciate you. Okay. I hope that you guys have an amazing rest of your evening. I'll be on first thing in the morning. And if you're not already, please hit the follow. Love you guys. Have a great night.